I reached out to Sam Kahn, I think it was sometime on Sunday, to ask him. I'd been traveling, so I asked him about, okay, what happens to the quarterback Aguilar at UCLA, and where's he going to end up? And he said, we got a couple stories out. And then I said, my God, do you get a chance to breathe? It was Sunday, it was Easter Sunday, and here I am pestering him. He said, quote, I was on my phone in the car this morning on my way to church, and my wife asked me, when does the portal close? A little distracted,
Friday.
were you? Friday, yeah. It's
a little
tomorrow.
bit,
yeah,
a little bit, yeah. It was, Easter Sunday, and it's a long weekend too, right? Because you have Good Friday, and then some people have Monday off. And traditionally, before I stepped into this job, that would have been a weekend that I would have been, hey, we're gonna chill, we're gonna dial it back a little bit, especially too because you don't really have a lot of you have some spring games going on, but not a ton. And yeah, it was portal open all weekend, so it's a work weekend for me. And so yeah, it was quite the moment because I could just tell, I'm on the phone and I'm checking through things and texting people, and she's like, when does the portal close? And I was like, Friday. So the answer is Friday for undergraduates, for graduate transfers. Unless you have a head coaching change from here on out, it closes tomorrow. So,
but that just means that you can stop looking to see who's going in. You still have to follow where they're going.
Correct. And also that's for immediate eligibility. I mean, I suppose people could still get in after this, but they won't necessarily be eligible this year. So if you want to play this fall, then you got to get in by midnight Friday. And that does not count the 48-hour lag time, because once the player notifies a school that they intend to transfer, they have up to 48 hours to enter their name in. So you could see some stragglers trickle in Saturday or Sunday as compliance departments put them in. But I would imagine that by tomorrow night, we're going to be pretty close to done. Hopefully.
Oklahoma State, Rangel's in the portal. We just mentioned this. Craig mentioned they have Haas Haney from TCU. But they don't have a player on their roster right now that has thrown a pass at the college level. That was a note from someone that covers Oklahoma State. Whether I didn't know whether or not Haney had thrown, but that's the note. Is Haney the guy? Is that the only one, or you think they're still looking?
Yeah, I think when Doug Meacham got that job, and I know he said when he got the job that he's not going to play favorites or anything, but you have to think that the familiarity that Haas Haney has with the offense that they ran at TCU, Doug Meacham's involvement in that offense, the last, decade he's been there essentially at TCU. I'd be hard pressed to think anybody other than him is going to be the favorite. Certainly Oklahoma ponied up to go get Haas Haney, and he's a superb talent. He's really athletic. Anybody who watched him at Aledo, watched him win a state championship, knows how talented he is. He can the thing is, he's small in terms of height, but he can really throw the football. Like I remember watching him when he was going into his senior year at the Elite 11 Regional in Austin, and you watched him line up with DJ Lagway or maybe Mettauer and all these other guys who were highly regarded, even Will Hammond at Texas Tech. And Haas Haney, in my opinion, threw the best ball out of all those guys that day. And to be able to drive the ball that he can at his frame and also have the speed and athleticism that he does. He's a 10-600 guy, or was in high school. He's a tremendous athlete. So if they go to him, I'm optimistic. There would be some freshman growing pains for sure. I mean, he was swimming a little bit last year, learned everything at TCU, but I think once he settles in, I think he's got a really, really bright future in Stillwater.
Any particular thoughts on how aggressive and some of the moves that Mike Gundy and company have made, Sam, off of last year's disappointment? It feels like they kind of got a kick in the pants, and they know, like, hey, man, we gotta produce here. So what have you thought of what you've seen that they've done this offseason?
Yeah, no doubt. I like some of their portal takes. Look, they're not going to be the program that's going to outbid people. And I think Mike Gundy has made that clear in the past, and that certainly reflects in their portal shopping. But I like some of the under radar guys they got. You guys were talking about Terrell Davis, the guy from Central Oklahoma. I was talking to a couple other personnel directors about him right before the portal opened. He was a guy who was really intriguing, who really broke out over there. And I think some schools were interested in him even the previous cycle, and Central Oklahoma somehow was able to keep him. Don't ask me how a lower division program is able to cobble the NIL funds to keep somebody, but they were. And so, but he ended up getting in this time, and I think that was a good pickup. Cam Abshire, who's a Division II guy from Emory and Henry, really, really productive at that level. So that's kind of the Mike Gundy way, right? Even when he was in high school recruiting and doing that heavily, he was able to find these off the radar guys. He would go to Canada and go find some underrated player and put him in the system, and then they turn out to be really good players. I think they're using that same philosophy in the portal, and I'm fascinated to see how it plays out.
Sam, Texas has cleaned up along the defensive line. I mean, they got the kid from Syracuse, the Maryland kid. They seem to kind of do that all the time now. They need a kick returner, though. Do you think that they will find that in Keelan Marion or someone like that, or is that going to be kind of their issue?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something you have enough athletes and the type of athletes they have. I don't know that necessarily is something you have to go get. I mean, they did that before when they went and got Silas Bolden the year before, and he played more of a role in the punt return game. But I think they are a team that has enough athletes on that team that if you don't necessarily find somebody specifically that fits your profile in the portal, that they've got enough players to go stick in one of those positions. Now, a kick return job is a lot easier than a punt return job. The kick return job, you've got some room to run. The punt return job, you're putting your Adam's apple up and exposing it for the world, and you might get hit. And that takes a different breed to do that. So, but I don't really, could it be an issue? Possibly, but I don't necessarily think it's going to be a huge issue. I think the one thing that stuck out to me with them, on top of the impact players that they got, you mentioned the defensive lineman, Jack Enders, the tight end from Cal, Emmett Mosley, the freshman receiver from Stanford, who was really good. The thing that I thought was really important is they got a kicker. They went and got Mason Shipley from Texas State, who's really, really good. Bert Auburn, who had been really good for them for a couple years, kind of fell off last year. His accuracy wasn't quite there. We saw all the missed kicks late in the season, particularly in the Peach Bowl, which were really, really rough. Them being able to go get somebody who is really good at place kicking, I think is huge, because that can determine a ball game for you, an SEC game. It can determine a playoff game. And so getting somebody that's a really, really good and really, really proficient and really, really accurate, I think was really important. So getting a guy like Shipley, I think, was really big for them.
Here we are towards the end of spring ball, and all of a sudden I see A.J. Halsey has entered the transfer portal, and I was like, damn, Houston. I mean, one of their better players last year, without a doubt. Just how much of a kick in the you-know-whats was that, Sam? How unexpected. I mean, it's not a surprise people came after him, but just the timing of it. And I saw Ole Miss is in contact with him, amongst others. What have you kind of heard there on A.J. Halsey?
Yeah, it's really tough, and it came right at the end of the spring game too. I think, I don't remember if the report came out during the spring game, but I know as soon as the game was over, he announced he was going to the portal. And that's a guy, an all Big 12 talent, somebody who they went and got in the portal a couple years ago out of New Mexico, who had a really, really good freshman season, and this is the kind of player that they're trying to get. So definitely a kick in the pants for them. Highly sought after. There's a lot of suitors in that one for sure, just because of the caliber player he is. He's definitely going to cost at this point in the spring portal. Guys, when you're looking for somebody, if you're especially coming across a premium talent, you're going to overpay a little bit. So definitely tough. But I would say overall, they fared pretty well in the spring portal, even though they're losing Halsey. I love some of their pickups. You know, they got the tight end from Wisconsin, who was at Ball State. Tanner Koziol was a really good one. They got the linebacker from Tulane today. I believe he committed. They have done a really sneaky good job, both in the winter and the spring portal. I love the way they've kind of shored up. They redid the entire offense in the winter. They got 5 new offensive linemen. They got 2 new receivers. They got a new quarterback. And now you add in, they got a tight end in the winter, and now they got a tight end now. So they've really retooled that whole offense, which it was, I think, the 133rd ranked offense in the country scoring wise. So there's really nowhere to go but up. But I thought they did a good job of addressing a lot of their needs.
Have you heard much about where Marion at BYU and Taggart, the linebacker, might end up? Marion is a great special teams returner. And also, they thought we had BYU's Mitch Harper on and Kalani Sitake yesterday. I just love the way Kalani handled even the topic of this of the portal. But have you heard much about them? How much in demand are they?
No, I haven't heard. I haven't checked around on them as much. But I do know. I mean, again, at this time of year, there's going to be a lot of demand for anything because teams are trying to fill needs at this point. So, it's going to be one of those things where if you got a need, you really got a few weeks to fill it here because you got to get guys enrolled before the summer school starts in June.
Sam Cohn with us, theathletic.com, Thursdays around 3:30.
Sam, with the House settlement and now the roster limits thing being now ordered to be phased in, and I guess they'll figure that out now, even though they should have done it, April 8th, the day after she told them to. What have you heard from coaches about how they're navigating that situation? Because it's hard. Like, here's the thing: they're going to wind up phasing these guys in, and some of them they're going to tell to go get in the portal. And then will they have time to be able to, no, you can stay like now? But it just seems so strange.
It is, and it's frustrating. I talked to a lot of coaches about this right before the portal opened because I wanted to know, hey, how are you handling this? Because you don't know if the roster limit's going to be installed this year or if they're going to phase in, because Wilkin brought up that issue. I think it was about really 8-9 days before the portal opened. So it would really put coaches in a tough spot. And I think different coaches have handled differently. Some of them already let their players know, even as far back as the winter. I talked to some coaches who told their players in December of last year, hey, if we're going to do a 105 this year, you're not going to make it, because they wanted to give their guys a chance to get in the winter portal. Then you had some guys who have told them either going into spring or in spring practice, hey, you're on the bubble. You may not make it. You may make it. If we're going to have 105, you may not make it. But if we're going to be able to keep more than 105 and phase it in, then you'll be able to be here. And you have some, and I haven't, nobody's told me this, that they've done it, but I've heard other coaches accuse other programs of saying, well, they're not telling their guys anything until they know for sure. And if they get left out in the cold, then so be it, which not the best way to handle this thing. But I do think it creates a challenge because the portal closes on Friday. And so if you're a player and then you find out that you do not have a spot, then it's a problem. But with Wilkin taking this hard stand on the roster limits being phased in, it seems to me that I think we're going to get to a place where the walk-ons who have not been told to go elsewhere are going to be able to hang on to their spot. And I think that's a good thing. I understand the stance that the NCAA has and the programs have, but I think her request is pretty sensible. And I cannot imagine, I would be really surprised if they would be willing to tank the settlement over this. I think phasing in roster limits for however many you have over 105 at this point to allow your currently eligible walk-on to stay on, I think it's sensible. And I don't think they're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater on this, because if you do and you're going to trial, it's going to open up a whole nother can of worms, not to mention the fact that so many programs have already started to plan to pay out revenue sharing and written contracts to say, this is what we're going to pay you when revenue sharing comes into effect. So you already have all this in motion. So it better happen, because if it doesn't, then we're going to have a whole nother issue to deal with.
Yeah, and it's kind of refreshing that as business-minded as everybody is these days, this is actually like a personal thing. Like the people are going to benefit from this. The students or the athletes are going to benefit from this. It's not just like, get them out of the way so we can make more money and streamline this thing. That was kind of refreshing, although we all want the court cases to go away, of course. Texas Tech, they just more Cash Cleveland now coming over from Colorado. And I saw some talk about like him bolstering them, not just for this year, but obviously, a couple more seasons. So any thoughts on that pickup that came down, I guess, earlier today?
I mean, the money well's not going dry over there anytime soon, I suppose. If you're Cody Campbell, man, the world's your oyster. So when they picked up all the transfer offensive linemen they did in the winter, certainly you had some guys go in that were at Tech that were younger guys or guys that thought maybe they were in line to play, and then Tech goes and gets some transfers. And Now all of a sudden you're like, well, maybe I'm going to go find a new home because I may not be playing as much as I thought. And so that creates a little bit of a depth issue. And so Texas Tech smartly is going to go try to find some younger offensive linemen that can be guys that maybe they can sell them on, hey, you fight for a spot now, even if you don't start, maybe you're rotational but you're here for the long term. And we know they got the money, so they'll be able to pay him. But I think it's also a deal of, hey, let's make sure that we have a solid foundation. Because what they don't want to do, and I don't think any program can survive this way, is you don't want to be portaling a new offensive line every year. That's not sustainable. It's hard to do. I think you can do it one time. Maybe you can get away with it a second time. But at some point, that position is a developmental position that you have to recruit, develop, and retain. If you notice, the programs that are winning national championships, competing deep in the playoff, they are not portaling in entire offensive line. Maybe they're getting one. I think about a program like Texas. I don't know that they had a single portal guy on their offensive line last year. All their guys were developmental guys.
I saw an article, in fact, that they have not brought in an offensive lineman through the portal since 21 when Sarkisian arrived. And that's about the time when they started to load up. Yeah,
they were kind of
for
messy,
whatever reason, they went about almost a decade or so, with they had a couple of guys, Cosme or a few others, but they had some highly ranked. Sometimes you wondered, because they committed to Texas, but they just were a mess on the offensive line. No question.
Yeah. It was, I think they hadn't had a first round pick at that position, I believe, since 2002, up until Kelvin Banks, which there'll be a first round pick likely tonight. But it's been 22 years since they had a first round pick at the offensive line position. And then I think they went from about 2007 to 2021 with only 2 linemen drafted, period. I mean, that's when you think about the program that Texas is and the caliber of player they attract or can attract, it's incredible. And it underscores why they were so bad throughout the 2010s, because they were really bad in the trenches. And now when they fix that part in 2022, 23, 24, all of a sudden they're a playoff team and they're a national championship contender again. It's kind of funny how that works.
Sam, Paul brought up the roster spots and how the leaders of, if you want to call them that, of the NCAA and college football have to go back to Judge Wilkin with something. But how dumb are they? How dumb are they? Yeah, they're trying to, but this is not surprise me, but this is a little dangerous. They're not going to eventually want to go to court. They don't want to go to a jury. But how arrogant was what they did and what Judge Wilkin wasn't happy with?
Yeah, because the thing is when they had the settlement here on an April 7th, and granted, it was 7-8 hours. I did not watch all 7-8 hours on it. I watched a chunk of it. But Claudia Wilkin was very clear about how important to her the idea of players losing their opportunities was. And she made that very clear time and time again on April 7th. And so when she gave the parties a chance to come back with a brief within 2 weeks, and they come back with no change to the roster limits, I was pretty surprised. I thought they would come back and say, okay, we'll grandfather in, or we'll cook up some kind of response to tweak it so that we address that concern. They didn't address that concern at all, which to me seemed like her biggest sticking point. And so she pretty much put the hammer down and was like, look, either you fix this or we're denying the settlement. And that's a pretty hard red line she drew in the sand there. So I think it's pretty clear, but you're right. I mean, I'm not going to pretend like I'm an NCAA lawyer or I know anything about legal advice, but you would have thought that you could get the message that she sent on April 7th that, hey, we do not want to rob the kids who are already enrolled of their current opportunities and kick them off the teams. And I don't think that's that hard to figure out. And it's not even a cost issue because you're talking about walk-ons. These are not players that are on scholarship, so to speak. I mean, there are some costs involved in feeding them and maybe travel and equipment and things like that, but we're not talking about tens of thousands of dollars in scholarship costs for these players. These are players that are walk-ons that are paying their own way. Maybe in some cases at some schools they're getting NIL money, but to me it was a slam dunk to figure that out. And so now she's really put the onus on them to either fix it or we're going to go to trial.
Yeah, I came up with a plan at the beginning of the show in like 30 seconds. So obviously it's not that hard, Sam. I mean, obviously there'd have to be some work on it, but that's what if I were them, I've been like, hey, figure this out money-wise. We'll just reduce it by 6 every year until 2030 or whatever it is, and then that way you can grandfather it in like she wanted. We have not talked about Nico in this interview, and we're not going to, but I do want to ask you about what you think about Joey Aguilar's fit in that offense. He was with Tito Sinceri, looked like reports were that he was kind of picking it up well. Now he has to kind of learn a whole new thing. But that offense is pretty quarterback friendly. It
is. I mean, you guys have seen it up close and personal. You don't need Joe Montana to run that thing. But he's a guy who can throw it. He's a dual threat. He can run it. I know a lot of people have looked at his interception numbers from last year. Talking to people who kind of know and followed that team, it seemed like they asked him to drop back pass a lot more than they did the year before. I think this offense will be a little bit more friendly to him and his skill set. And to me, this is going to be a fascinating Tennessee season to follow, and particularly because of him. I'm not going to say he's going to be this caliber of player, so to speak, but could he be their Diego Pavia, so to speak, which would be a little bit fitting because Diego Pavia is the reason Joey Aguilar is still going to play because he got the extra year of eligibility from the blanket waiver from the Diego Pavia lawsuit. But going from the group of 5 to the SEC, which is what Diego did, could he be a really good fit and help Tennessee in a big way? I think so. You're certainly better off putting a guy with 25 starts out there than you are with 2 former 4-star recruits who have 9 combined pass attempts between them. And that's no offense to the 2 guys they got. I think they're both former 4-star recruits for a reason. They'll probably be really good. But if you have sights on contending for a playoff spot, you want to have somebody who's got some experience in there. And so he is going to be a fascinating story to watch because he is the guy who got impacted by this by no fault of his own. He ended up at UCLA to take advantage of his last year to go back to his home state. He's from California, so he wanted to go back to his home state and give it a try at the Power 4 level. Then Nico comes in and, he ends up at Tennessee. And so I think he's going to have a lot of people rooting for him this year and that are kind of rooting for Tennessee just to see how that plays out because of the saga that led him there and all the different things. And again, I think we all like underdog stories, and he is an underdog story. He didn't really seem to get recruited much out of high school. He went junior college for 2 years, went to App State, and then ended up at UCLA before the Nico thing happened. So I'm fascinated to learn more about him and to see how it plays out. But I think Heupel and Joey Hazel, I think they'll be smart. They're not going to overload him. They're going to let him get to know his teammates and eat up that playbook this summer. And I think it'll be a lot of fun to watch how it plays out this fall.
Sam, thank you, buddy. By the way, if you get a chance this weekend, I mean this because you're good to us. We appreciate it. If you have a chance to take your wife out to dinner, let me know where you're going. I'll give you an e-card for part of your dinner or whatever it will be, like $100. How about that?
Hell yeah.
No, seriously.
I'm down with that.
I mean that. You're good to us, man.
Sam, go to
no, don't go to
go to the
Taste of Texas, baby.
Yeah, there you go. Absolutely. You're
$100.
You're in Houston, right? Go to the Pappas Brothers Steakhouse.
Yeah, there's a good one.
Oh man, I haven't been to Pappas Brothers in a long time.
Yeah, there you
100 might not even cover me at Pappas.
A glass of tea and a roll. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
Thanks, y'all. Y'all take care.
You, Sam.